Hello everyone and welcome back to the Airfix YouTube channel. In this video we're going to build and paint this 1/72 scale Tiger 1 starter set from Airfix. As a starter set, this has been specifically engineered from the ground up to be quick and easy to build without compromising on detail. It has a reduced parts count, which is excellent for beginners to the hobby. As a starter set, this also includes a small tube of polycement, a paintbrush and 3 Humbrol acrylics, so you have everything you need here in the box. On the rear of the box, the actual size diagram gives colour callouts for the 3 paints included, as well as marking placement instructions. And there are markings included in the kit to make a replica of Tiger number 334 from Russia in July of 1944. Inside the box you'll find 3 sprues of injection moulded plastic, which is light tan in colour and a good match for German dark yellow. In the smaller bag you'll find the polycement, the paintbrush and 3 Humbrol acrylics as per the callouts on the rear of the box. There's a small sheet of transfers included with the markings for the vehicle, and of course the instructions, which detail the construction process from start to finish. It's important that you read this thoroughly before you begin. There's also the Before You Start leaflet, which details some of the tools and techniques used in assembling Airfix kits, and this can be read in conjunction with videos such as this one. The tools that you'll see us using in this video are from the Humbrol Modelers toolset. This is a great way to get started in the hobby, and it contains a file, a set of tweezers, some cutters for removing parts from the sprue, and a modelling knife, which is basically everything you need to get started. If you're new to the hobby, you'll notice that all of the kit parts are held together on these frames, which are commonly referred to as sprues. Each one of these frames is lettered, and that forms the first part of the call out in the instructions for each piece. The letter for each frame can be found moulded into the long rectangular tab, and then next to each one of the pieces you'll see a small tab which contains the part number. Once you've found the parts that you need, they have to be cut from the sprue carefully, and you can see that we're using the cutters from the Humbrol tool set to gently snip them away. Notice that we're not cutting right up against the side of the components, instead we're leaving a little bit of a gap. This is just to prevent any damage from getting onto the surface of the model, but it does leave these small protruding pieces of plastic. These can be trimmed away easily with the modelling knife, and then any excess removed with the file. This is basic model part cleanup and is one of the most fundamental techniques in building model kits. It's important that you remove all of this excess, as it may interfere with the fit of the parts. With all of the lower hull pieces removed from the sprue, it's time to glue this assembly together, and in the instructions the blue lines denote the surfaces which need to receive Humbrol's polycement. Polycement isn't an ordinary glue. It works by melting the plastic so that the 2 pieces become permanently joined. It's supplied in a tube with quite a big nozzle, and it can be tricky to control, so in order to apply it with a bit more precision, we've cut a small piece of the kit box away to work as a pallet, and another piece was being folded with a point to work as an applicator. This way we can apply the polycement onto the surface of the pallet piece and then use the applicator to take the glue to the model. Using this technique, we're also able to concentrate the polycement along the inside face of the join, so that when the 2 parts are pressed together, it doesn't come squeezing out of the gap. This will result in a much cleaner build. Once that glue bead is applied as per the instructions, the side of the hull is pressed into position. After waiting for a few seconds for the polycement to do its thing, those pieces should hold together themselves. Where the 2 parts meet at the front, a small dab of glue is added from the inside just to keep them together, and then it's onto the other side of the hull, again applying the polycement along the inside face of the join before pressing the other side of the hull into position and giving that front section a little dab of the glue as well. Because these starter sets are specifically engineered as a nice easy introduction to the hobby for newer modelers, the 2 techniques that we've covered so far to clean up and then glue the parts are all that you really need to get to grips with in order to put this kit together perfectly. We're going to carry on repeating this process, cleaning up and gluing until the lower hull is complete. Just remember, if you're a newer modeller, try to keep your glue on the inside of the model where it won't be visible once the parts are fitted together, and you'll be left with a really nice clean build. For some of the smaller detailed parts, a set of tweezers really comes in handy just to help manoeuvre them into position. Here you can see the completed lower hull, and this model's starting to look like a Tiger 1. Everything's nice and clean and smooth, so it's time to proceed onto the turret. When gluing the two turret halves together, it's important not to get any polycement on the gun mount. This piece is held in place, trapped between the two turret halves, and rotates freely, which is what enables us to elevate the gun on the model. The rest of the process was really straightforward, with the same two techniques for cleanup and gluing used throughout, but again we do encounter some small detail parts where a pair of tweezers comes in handy to manoeuvre them into place, and this also keeps your fingers away from the polycement, avoiding the risk of any fingerprints on the surface of the model. Once the muzzle brake was assembled, we also gave this a quick pass with the file to get rid of the join seam. The muzzle brake is one piece on the real vehicle, and this is just a small touch to help build a better model. Here you can see that construction is complete on the hull and the turret. Everything's nice and smooth and free from excess glue, and the gun elevates as it should, so it's time to move on to the tracks. Because the tracks are so wide on a Tiger 1, with the return roller recessed so far into the assembly, these parts are moulded in two halves. This gives good access for painting, but we need to do this before we join the two halves together, so we're going to skip forward now to the painting process. The three paints supplied with the kit are all Humbrol acrylics, and we have silver, black and dark yellow. Dark yellow is the base colour for the kit, and we're going to start with this paint first. Some of these paints may have been sat on the shelf of your hobby shop for some time, and the paint can separate, so before starting, give the paint a good stir, and this should get everything nice and smooth again. After transferring some of the paint to a palette, it's thinned with ordinary tap water to a ratio of about 50%. This keeps the application nice and smooth and allows us to add a couple of thin layers to the model without obscuring any detail. Using the colour diagram on the back of the kit box as a guide, all areas of the track assembly which need to be dark yellow are given a couple of thin layers of this diluted acrylic paint. With the running gear painted, it's time to paint the actual tracks themselves. Using the black paint supplied with the kit, again thinned about 50% with tap water, we're going to apply this as a base coat for the silver applied later on. In areas where we can't quite reach with the paintbrush, this will also form a false shadow and give the illusion of depth. Take extra care when applying the black base coat, as we obviously don't want to hit any of those dark yellow surfaces that we've already painted. As an optional touch, we also decided to paint the rubber of the road wheels with the black paint. This could prove quite difficult for a beginner modeller, so it's not shown on the diagram on the back of the kit box, but these Tigers were fitted with rubber road wheels, so we've decided to add this detail in. If you do attempt this, any areas where you accidentally paint over the dark yellow can simply be touched up with some of the diluted dark yellow mixture from earlier. With all of the details around the road wheels completed, the black base coat was extended onto the rest of the tracks. There are a lot of raised details on these assemblies, so a little bit of care was needed to make sure there was no plastic left showing through in any of the recessed areas. Once that was complete, we had a nicely painted set of tracks with good strong definition between the dark yellow and black base coats. The next colour to be applied was silver. This is quite thin straight from the pot, so only about 10 to 20% tap water was added just to make it go on nice and smoothly. When applying this mixture to the tracks, only the raised details were caught with the tip of the brush, allowing some of that black base coat to remain in between the track links. The inside face of the tracks was also painted silver, as well as the guide horns which go around the idler wheel. Extra care was needed in these areas, as we obviously didn't want to get any silver on the dark yellow base coat. With that step completed, the tracks are finished, but we're not going to apply them to the model just yet, as we want to be able to access the underside of the hull to paint on the tank's dark yellow base coat. The rest of the Tiger needed to receive a nice straightforward base coat of dark yellow. Again, we thinned it down about 50% with ordinary tap water, and we started the application around the details, making sure to get into all of the crevices and leave no bare plastic showing through. After that was complete, we moved on to the larger areas. On the Tiger 1 tank, there are some quite featureless parts of the vehicle, and as a model that leaves you with a large flat smooth area of bare plastic to paint over. Using diluted acrylic paint on an area such as this will lead to some surface tension issues where the paint beads up and doesn't seem to want to stick to the model. By using short, fast brush strokes over these areas, the surface tension can be broken, and thanks to the extra tap water in the paint, this will then self-level, and we were able to get 2 coats down without any 3-dimensional texture in the paint. If you're able to get hold of some of Humbrol's acrylic spray primer, this is a great way to prepare the surface to receive the base coats of paint. However, we wanted to paint this model only with the contents of the starter set to show that it's absolutely possible to get a nice smooth finish by painting directly onto bare plastic using just the brush supplied with the starter kit. Now that everything's base coated, there's just one last step before we apply the markings, and that's to paint in the Pioneer tools which are mounted on the hull and the machine gun barrels. First, a coat of black is applied over the raised details. We paint this right up to the edge of the tool clamps, which are going to remain dark yellow, and we're using the black paint supplied with the kit, but this time it's only been diluted with about 20% tap water. The dark yellow paint underneath is a semi-gloss, and using too thin a mixture may result in it running down the sides of the tools and getting onto the base coat of the tank itself, which we want to avoid. We're extending our black base coat right the way down the side of the raised details to the point where the tools meet the hull. If you're a beginner to the hobby, or if this is your first kit, this technique may prove to be a bit of a challenge and could result in some unsightly accidents. So it might be best that you just skip this step and leave the Pioneer tools dark yellow, or just paint the upper surfaces and then move on to applying the silver. The silver has been diluted about 10% with tap water this time, and you can see how smoothly it goes on over that black base coat. Any areas of the tools which would have been bare metal are given a slight application, leaving some of that black visible between the silver and the hull. This gives really nice definition of the details and works kind of like a false shadow. With all of these tools and details painted in, it breaks up that dark yellow hull nicely and gives the model a bit of visual interest. All that's left to do now is glue the tracks on with a little bit of poly cement, and we can move on to applying the markings. Everything's looking nice and smooth, and we're on course for a nice finish, so let's get busy with the transfer sheet. All of the markings are numbered and their locations are shown in the diagrams on the back of the kit box. When you've picked a marking that you wish to apply, you first need to cut it free from the sheet. After cutting it free from the sheet, use tweezers to dip the markings in some ordinary tap water and then leave this to soak for 30 seconds to a minute. Because these aren't stickers, the tap water is actually reactivating an adhesive on the backing paper, and once this has been left for a while, you'll notice that the marking slides free when you touch it with a paintbrush. This means it's ready to apply. Apply some water to the surface of the model and then slide the transfer into position. By applying water in this fashion, it enables you to move the markings around once they've been applied, so you can get them into the perfect place. After you've got everything right where you want it, use a little tissue to dab off the excess water and the markings are complete. After leaving everything to dry for a couple of hours, the markings have settled down nicely over the raised details on the side of the turret, and this Tiger 1 is complete. If you've been building a Tiger along with us at home, now's the time to decide whether you want to pop this model on the shelf and admire your little replica of this iconic piece of German armour, or maybe it's time to be a little bit more adventurous and try some weathering with the Humbrol range of products. If you're a beginner to the hobby, we hope that by providing these videos we're giving you a little bit of guidance and inspiration to help you get started in scale modelling. Either way, Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again next time.